A wealthy millionaire never imagined that his card would be refused for a simple coffee in the middle of the afternoon. Embarrassed, he receives a coin from a humble girl, along with the phrase that would change everything. "My mother taught me to help sad people." What seemed like a sweet gesture turns into an emotional earthquake when he discovers that the girl may be the daughter he never knew. Amid secrets, hidden abuse, and a divided courtroom, a story is born that proves that true love is capable of rebuilding broken destinies. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. It was just a regular Tuesday morning at Prospect Coffee in downtown Boston when Maxwell Thornton's world turned upside down. As CEO of Thornton Investments, Max was accustomed to wielding power with a simple gesture. His tailored Brooks Brothers suit and Patek Philippe watch marked him as someone who belonged in the financial district's gleaming towers, not someone who would experience the mundane embarrassment of a declined credit card. "I'm sorry, sir. Your card has been declined," the barista said, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. Max felt the heat of embarrassment creep up his neck. "That's impossible. Try it again." The barista swiped again and shook her head apologetically. "Still, declined. Do you have another card?" His wallet contained only business cards and a driver's license. No cash, no other cards. He had left his backup credit card in his other jacket after a dinner meeting the previous night. In the rush of his morning routine, he hadn't noticed. "I don't understand," Max muttered, more to himself than to the barista. There should be no issue with that account. As he stood there, caught in that peculiar helplessness that only the wealthy experience when their money suddenly fails them, a small voice piped up from beside him. "You can have this." Max looked down to see a little girl, no more than 6 years old, holding up a $5 bill. She had remarkable emerald green eyes that seemed to capture the morning light streaming through the cafe windows. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a slightly messy ponytail, and her red coat was well worn but clean. "My mommy says we should help sad people," she said, her voice sweet and clear, untroubled by adult anxieties about money and status. Something in Max's chest tightened unexpectedly. The innocence of the gesture, free from the calculation that colored most of his adult interactions, caught him completely off guard. "That's very kind of you," he said, crouching down to her level. "But I couldn't take your money." "It's okay," she insisted, pushing the bill toward him. "Mommy says being kind makes the world prettier." Before Max could respond, a harried-looking woman approached, holding a to-go cup of coffee. "Lily, what are you doing?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "This man's card didn't work, and he looked sad," Lily explained simply. The woman's cheeks flushed. "I'm so sorry, sir. She's always trying to help people." She turned to the little girl. "Honey, the gentleman can figure this out on his own." Max stood up, strangely moved by the child's gesture. "Your daughter is quite remarkable," he said to the woman. "Actually, I'd like to return the kindness. What were you planning to get, Lily?" The little girl's eyes lit up. "A blueberry muffin. Mrs. Cooper said I was the best helper in class this week, and Mommy said I could have a special treat." "1. Blueberry muffin it is," Max said, taking out his phone. "I'll use Apple Pay instead." As the transaction went through successfully, Max caught the woman watching him carefully. There was something guarded in her expression, something that seemed out of place for such a benign interaction. "Thank you," she said, her voice polite but distant. "That's very generous." "It's nothing," Max replied, handing the muffin to Lily. "Your daughter brightened my morning. Congratulations on being the best helper, Lily." The little girl beamed at him. "Thank you, mister." As they turned to leave, Max called after them. "I didn't catch your name," he said to the woman. She hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Rebecca," she said finally. "Rebecca Hayes." "Max Thornton," he replied. "It was nice meeting you both." As they walked away, Max watched them for a moment longer than necessary. There was something about the little girl that tugged at his memory, something he couldn't quite place. Perhaps it was just her remarkable green eyes, so unusual and striking. His phone buzzed with an email from his assistant explaining the card issue, a security hold due to an unusual purchase pattern. mundane problems of a privileged life. He should have been focusing on his upcoming board meeting, but instead, he found himself thinking about the little girl named Lily. Lily. The name hit him like a physical blow as the realization dawned. 7. Years ago, he and Caroline had chosen that name together for their unborn daughter. Caroline Mitchell, the brilliant law student he'd fallen for despite their different backgrounds. They had planned a life together until she suddenly disappeared from Boston without explanation, 3 months pregnant with his child. His frantic search had turned up nothing. It was as if she had simply vanished, leaving him with only unanswered questions and the hollow ache of loss. The coincidence was too striking to ignore. A little girl named Lily, around 6 years old, with green eyes just like Caroline's. Could it possibly be? The timing would be right, but Caroline's name wasn't Rebecca, and her last name had been Mitchell, not Hayes. For the rest of the day, Max couldn't focus on work. The memory of Caroline's disappearance, which he had carefully compartmentalized over the years, came flooding back. The desperate phone calls, the private investigators who found nothing, the police who eventually suggested she had chosen to leave, and there was nothing they could do. That evening, alone in his Beacon Hill brownstone, Max poured himself a scotch and stood by the window overlooking the Charles River. The city lights reflected on the dark water, shimmering and ephemeral like his own certainties about his life. He pulled out his phone and called James Riker, the security consultant who had helped with his search for Caroline years ago. "Max, it's been a while," James answered, his voice gruff but familiar. "I need your help with something," Max said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "A discreet investigation." "I'm listening." "I met a woman and a little girl today. The girl's name is Lily. She's about 6 years old, and she has green eyes just like Caroline's." There was a pause on the line. James was one of the few people who knew the full story of Caroline's disappearance and what it had done to Max. "You think it might be your daughter?" James asked carefully. "I don't know," Max admitted, "but I need to find out." "The woman's name is Rebecca Hayes. They were at Prospect Coffee on Boylston Street this morning around 8:30. "That's not much to go on." "I know, but you've worked with less before." Another pause. "All right, I'll see what I can find. But Max..." "Yes?" "Don't get your hopes up, and don't do anything rash. Let me handle the investigation. I just need to know the truth, James, one way or another." After hanging up, Max returned to the window. For 7 years he had built his empire, expanded his influence, and buried himself in work to avoid confronting the hole Caroline had left in his life. He had dated occasionally, but never allowed anyone close enough to truly matter. Some wounds, never fully healed, but now a chance encounter with a generous little girl had ripped open those old scars. If Lily was indeed his daughter, where had Caroline been all these years? Why had she disappeared, and who was this Rebecca Hayes? For the first time in years, Max felt something beyond the comfortable numbness that had become his emotional baseline. It was a dangerous mixture of hope and fear, possibility and dread. Because if Lily was his daughter, everything in his carefully controlled life was about to change. And if she wasn't, if this was just a cruel coincidence, he would have to learn to bury his hopes all over again. For 3 days, Max tried to focus on his work, but thoughts of Lily consumed him. Each meeting became an exercise in pretending to be present, while his mind wandered back to those striking green eyes. By Thursday evening, his phone buzzed with a text from James. "Found something. Can we meet?" An hour later, they sat in the bar, private backroom of an understated steakhouse in Back Bay, where Max was known well enough that discretion was guaranteed without being requested. James slid a manila folder across the table. "Rebecca Hayes works at Harborview Diner near the waterfront. She's been there for about 5 years, started as a waitress and was promoted to shift manager last year. Lives in a small apartment in Dorchester with her daughter, Lily." Max opened the folder, finding photos of Rebecca and Lily entering their apartment building, walking to a bus stop, and at a small neighborhood park. His chest tightened at the sight of the little girl on a swing, her face lit with joy. What about their background? Birth certificates? Previous addresses? James leaned back, his expression guarded. That's where things get interesting. Rebecca. Hayes exists on paper, but barely. Massachusetts driver's license issued 5 years ago. Social security number checks out, but there's almost nothing before she appeared in Boston. No credit history, no prior addresses I can find. It's as if she materialized out of thin air 5 years ago. Max's pulse quickened. And Lily? No birth certificate filed in Massachusetts, which isn't conclusive. She could have been born in another state. What about school records? She's enrolled at Greenwood Elementary, started kindergarten. Last year, now in first grade. Her emergency contact is listed as Rebecca Hayes' mother. No father listed anywhere. Max took a slow sip of his scotch, feeling the burn in his throat. It could still be a coincidence. Could be, James agreed. But there's one more thing. He pulled out another photo, this one older and slightly faded. This is from your company's holiday party 7 years ago, the last one Caroline attended with you. Max stared at the photo. Caroline's face smiled back at him, her green eyes bright with happiness. She wore the black dress he had always loved, her dark hair swept up elegantly. Now look at this. James placed a surveillance photo next to it, showing Rebecca at the diner, her hair lighter and cut differently, her clothes simple and practical, but her profile unmistakable. It's not Caroline, Max said immediately, though uncertainty crept into his voice. The hair color is different, the style. Hair can be dyed, styles can change, James said, carefully. I'm not saying it's definitely her, but there are similarities that can't be ignored. Max stared at the photos, his mind racing. Caroline's full name was Caroline Mitchell. Any connection to Rebecca Hayes? Nothing obvious, but I did find something else. James hesitated. Caroline had a roommate in law school, a woman named Rebecca Hayes. The implications hit Max like a physical blow. You think Caroline stole her roommate's identity? I think it's a possibility worth considering. The timing fits. Rebecca Hayes, the real one, moved to Seattle after law school. It would be easy enough for Caroline to use her identity, especially if they'd been close, friends with access to each other's personal information. Max leaned back, processing this new information. But why? Why would Caroline disappear, change her identity, and hide my daughter from me? It doesn't make sense. People do strange things for all sorts of reasons, James said. Fear, protection, running from something or someone. I never gave her any reason to fear me, Max said, an edge creeping into his voice. We were happy. We were planning a future together. James nodded non-committally. What do you want to do now? Max considered his options. He could confront Rebecca directly, but if she was indeed Caroline or someone connected to Caroline, she might panic and disappear again. He could involve the authorities, but without concrete proof that Lily was his daughter, there was little they could do. I want to talk to her, Max decided. Not confront her, just talk. Get to know her, see if I can figure out what's going on. That could spook her if she's hiding something. I'll be careful. Make it seem like a coincidence. Maybe offer her a thank you lunch for Lily's kindness. Max tapped his fingers on the table, thinking. Can you find out when she works, when she picks up Lily from school? James nodded. Already did. She works breakfast and lunch shifts, Monday through Friday. Picks up Lily from school at 3:15 most days, except Wednesdays when Lily has after-school art class until 4:30. Max raised an eyebrow. Thorough as always. It's my job, James replied simply. Just be careful, Max. If this woman is Caroline, or if she's connected to Caroline somehow, there must be a reason she's been hiding all these years. The next day, Max found himself parked across the street from Harborview Diner during the mid-afternoon lull. He watched as Rebecca moved efficiently between tables, her manner professional, but warm with regular customers. There was something in her movements, in the tilt of her head when she listened, that reminded him painfully of Caroline. At 2:45, she hung up her apron, said goodbye to co-workers, and headed for the bus stop. Max followed at a distance, careful not to be noticed. She rode to a stop near Greenwood Elementary, arriving just as children began streaming out of the building. Lily emerged, her backpack nearly as big as she was, and ran to her mother with unrestrained joy. Rebecca knelt to embrace her, smoothing her hair and listening intently as Lily chattered about her day. The tenderness in their interaction was undeniable, and Max felt a surprising pang of jealousy for these simple moments he had missed. He followed them to a small neighborhood park, where Lily played, while Rebecca sat on a bench watching her. After gathering his courage, Max approached casually as if their meeting was entirely coincidental. "Rebecca and Lily, right?" he said, feigning surprise. "From the coffee shop the other day." Rebecca startled visibly, her posture stiffening, as she recognized him. "Mr. Thornton, what are you doing here?" "Max, please," he corrected with a smile. "I had a meeting nearby and thought I'd enjoy the nice weather before heading back to the office." The lie came easily, though he felt a twinge of guilt. What a pleasant surprise to run into you both. Lily, spotting him from the playground, came running over. "Hi, mister. Did your card get fixed?" Max laughed, genuine warmth spreading through him at her directness. "It did, thank you, and I'm still grateful for your offer to help that day." Rebecca stood, placing a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. Her smile was polite but didn't reach her eyes. "We should be going. It was nice seeing you again." "Actually," Max said quickly, "I was hoping to thank you both properly. Would you let me take you to lunch this weekend? There's a great place near the Children's Museum that has amazing desserts." The invitation hung in the air between them. Rebecca's expression flickered between suspicion and uncertainty. "Please, Mommy," Lily tugged at her mother's hand. "I love desserts." "I don't think that's a good idea," Rebecca said carefully. "We don't really know you, Mr. Thornton." "I understand," Max said, reaching for his business card. "But the offer stands. If you change your mind, my number's on here. And just so you know, I'm not—" He glanced at Lily, choosing his words carefully. "I'm not looking for anything other than to say thank you to a kind little girl and her mother." Rebecca took the card reluctantly, slipping it into her pocket. Without looking at it, "We need to get home. Goodbye, Mr. Thornton." "Bye," Lily called, waving enthusiastically as her mother led her away. Max watched them go, noting the tension in Rebecca's shoulders and the way she kept glancing back to ensure they weren't being followed. It wasn't the reaction of someone who had simply been caught off guard by a chance encounter. It was the reaction of someone afraid. That evening, Max called James again. "I need more information. Something's not right." She was scared when she saw me. "Give me a few more days," James replied. "I'm following up on some leads about Caroline's family background." "And Max?" "Yes?" "If this woman is hiding from someone, there might be a good reason. Be careful not to make things worse." Max hung up, staring at the ceiling of his bedroom. The rational part of him knew he should wait for more information before taking further action, but another part, the part that had never stopped wondering, what had happened to Caroline and their unborn child, couldn't wait. He picked up his phone and typed a text to the number James had provided for Rebecca. "This is Max Thornton. I understand your hesitation today. No pressure, but my offer stands. Lunch, dessert, wherever you and Lily would be comfortable. Just to say thank you." He stared at the message for a long time before pressing send, knowing he was crossing a line but unable to stop himself. If there was even a chance that Lily was his daughter, he needed to know. After 7 years of questions without answers, he deserved that much. 2 days passed without a response from Rebecca. Max threw himself into work, but his mind constantly drifted to Lily and the possibility that she might be his daughter. On Sunday evening, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Thornton, this is James Riker. I have some information you'll want to hear in person." An hour later, James sat across from Max in his home office, his expression unusually grave. "I tracked down someone who might know something about what happened to Caroline," James began, placing a photo on the desk. It showed an elderly woman standing outside a modest house in rural Vermont. "This is Martha Winters, a retired midwife. She practiced for over 40 years in a small town called Riverton, about 3 hours north of Boston." Max studied the photo. "What's her connection to Caroline?" 7 years ago, Martha was called to attend an emergency home birth at a remote cabin outside town. A young woman, very pregnant, had shown up alone and rented the place under the name Jane Smith, paying cash for 6 months up front. She kept to herself, only going into town for necessities. Max leaned forward, his heart rate accelerating. Was it Caroline? James pulled out another photo, a blurry security camera image from a small general store. Despite the poor quality, the woman's profile was unmistakably Caroline's. The timing matches, James continued. This was taken about 3 months after Caroline disappeared from Boston. Martha says she delivered a healthy baby girl, but there were complications afterward, heavy bleeding that she couldn't control. Max felt the blood drain from his face. What are you saying? James's voice softened. Martha did everything she could, but without hospital equipment. The mother didn't make it, Max. She lost consciousness shortly after holding her daughter for the first time. The room seemed to tilt. Max gripped the edge of his desk, trying to process what he was hearing. Caroline was gone. Truly gone, not just missing. The finality of it struck him with unexpected force despite the years of uncertainty. What happened to the baby? He managed to ask, his voice barely audible. That's where it gets complicated. Before she lost consciousness, the mother asked Martha to contact someone, a friend named Rebecca Hayes. She gave Martha a letter to deliver to her and made her promise not to register the birth officially until Rebecca came. Max's mind raced. So the woman I met, the one calling herself Rebecca Hayes, could be the real Rebecca Hayes, who came to claim her friend's baby, James finished. Martha says a woman arrived about a week later, showed ID as Rebecca Hayes and took the baby. Martha gave her the letter and all of Caroline's belongings. This Rebecca was devastated about her friend, but seemed determined to honor her wishes. Did Martha know what was in the letter? James shook his head. No, but she said Caroline was terrified of something or someone, kept saying she had to protect her baby from him. Max stood abruptly, pacing the room. She couldn't have meant me. I loved her. I would have done anything for her and our child. There's more, James said carefully. I did some digging into Caroline's family. Her mother died when she was 15. After that, she lived with her father, Senator Richard Mitchell. I know all this, Max said impatiently. I met him once. Caroline wasn't close to him. Said he was too focused on his political career to be much of a father. That's the public story, James agreed. But I found some concerning information. Caroline had therapy sessions during college. The records are sealed, of course, but I managed to locate her former roommate, the real Rebecca Hayes in Seattle. What did she say? She was reluctant to talk at first, but when I mentioned Caroline's daughter might be in Boston, she opened up. According to her, Caroline's relationship with her father was complicated, controlling, psychologically abusive. She said Caroline spent years in therapy working through it. Max sank back into his chair, trying to reconcile this information with the Caroline he had known, brilliant, independent, sometimes guarded about her past, but always warm and loving with him. Rebecca told me something else, James continued. She said Caroline was terrified when she found out she was pregnant. Not because of you, she loved you, but because of how her father might react. Apparently, he had sabotaged her previous relationships, convinced her that no man would ever love her for herself. That's insane, Max said. Senator Mitchell is one of the most respected politicians in Massachusetts. Public faces can hide private monsters, James replied simply. According to Rebecca, Caroline had finally broken free of her father's influence when she met you, but when she got pregnant, she panicked. She was afraid her father would try to control her child the way he had controlled her. Max remembered the few times Caroline had mentioned her father, always briefly, always changing the subject quickly. He had attributed it to the natural distance between a career politician and his daughter. How much had he missed? So you think Caroline ran away to protect our baby from her father? And then when the complications happened, this Rebecca Hayes took over? James nodded. It's the most likely scenario based on the evidence. The Rebecca Hayes in Boston is using her real name, but she's living under the radar. Minimal digital footprint, cache-based existence when possible. Classic signs of someone trying not to be found. And Lily has no official birth certificate, Max added, pieces falling into place. Because they never registered the birth. Exactly. Martha says she gave Rebecca a handwritten certificate, but without filing it officially with the state. It's not a legal document. Max stood again, determination replacing shock. I need to talk to her, to Rebecca. If Lily is my daughter, I have rights. I've missed 6 years of her life already. Be careful, James warned. If Senator Mitchell is as controlling as the Seattle Rebecca described, and if he's the one Caroline was running from, confronting Boston Rebecca directly could spook her. She might run again and you'd lose any chance of knowing your daughter. What do you suggest? Let me keep investigating. I want to talk to Martha Winters again, see if she remembers anything else, and maybe dig deeper into Senator Mitchell's history. Meanwhile, you could try building trust with Rebecca gradually. Don't push too hard. The next morning, Max waited outside Harborview Diner until he saw Rebecca arrive for her shift. He entered casually, taking a seat at the counter. When she approached to take his order, her expression hardened. "What are you doing here?" she asked quietly. "Having breakfast," Max replied calmly. "This is a public restaurant." "You're following me." Max met her gaze steadily. "I'd like to talk to you. Just talk. About Caroline Mitchell." The color drained from Rebecca's face. She glanced around nervously, then leaned closer. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do," Max said gently. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to understand what happened. Caroline disappeared 7 years ago, pregnant with my child. Now I meet a little girl named Lily, the same name we had chosen together, with the same green eyes as her mother." Rebecca's hands trembled slightly as she clutched her order pad. "You need to leave." "Please," Max said, his voice low and urgent. "If Lily is my daughter, I have a right to know her. I would have been there for both of them. I loved Caroline." Something flickered in Rebecca's eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or a moment of empathy quickly suppressed. "I have customers waiting," she said, stepping back. "Please leave and don't come back." "I'll go," Max conceded, standing. But this isn't over. I'll be at Boston Common by the duck pond at 4 o'clock today. If you want to talk, really talk, I'll be waiting." He left without looking back, hoping he hadn't pushed too hard. As he walked to his car, his phone buzzed with a text from James. "Found something big, call me ASAP." James's voice was tight with urgency when Max called. "I got access to Caroline's therapy records. It's worse than we thought. Her father's psychological manipulation was extreme. Classic case of coercive control bordering on emotional incest. The therapist noted that Mitchell convinced Caroline from an early age that no one would ever love her the way he did, that other men only wanted to use her." Max felt sick. Why didn't she tell me? Victims of this kind of abuse often feel shame, like it's their fault somehow. Plus, her father is a powerful man with a spotless public image. Who would believe her? Max thought about the few interactions he'd had with Senator Mitchell, the subtle dismissiveness, the way he'd evaluated Max like he was assessing a business transaction rather than meeting his daughter's partner. Had there been signs he'd missed? "There's more," James continued. "I showed Martha a photo of Senator Mitchell. She recognized him. Said he came to Riverton about a month after the baby was born, asking questions about a young pregnant woman. Martha didn't tell him anything, but she warned Rebecca when she came for the baby that someone was looking for them." "So Mitchell knew Caroline was pregnant," Max said, pieces clicking into place. "He followed her, and has possibly been looking for them ever since," James finished, "which explains why Rebecca is so cautious, why Lily has no official records. They're hiding from him." At 4 o'clock, Max sat on a bench by the duck pond in Boston Common, watching families enjoying the late afternoon sunshine. He had almost given up hope when he spotted Rebecca approaching cautiously, alone. She sat beside him, keeping distance between them, her posture tense. "I can't stay long. My neighbor is watching Lily." "Thank you for coming," Max said sincerely. Rebecca looked straight ahead, her profile reminding him painfully of Caroline. "What do you want from us?" "The truth," Max replied simply. "Is Lily my daughter?" After a long pause, Rebecca nodded almost imperceptibly. "Yes." The confirmation, even though he had suspected it, hit Max with physical force. "Why didn't Caroline tell me? Why did she run away?" Rebecca turned to face him, her expression a mixture of caution and resignation. "She was trying to protect your daughter from her father. She was afraid of what he might do, how he might try to control Lily the way he controlled her." "Not from me." Rebecca hesitated. "She wasn't sure. Her father had poisoned her against trusting anyone. He told her you only wanted her for her. Connections that once you had a child, you'd use it to control her. She was confused, scared. I loved her," Max said, his voice breaking slightly. "I would have protected both of them." "I know that now," Rebecca admitted, but Caroline wasn't thinking clearly then. Her father had spent years breaking down her self-worth, her ability to trust. When she realized she was pregnant, all those insecurities came flooding back. Max took a deep breath, steadying himself. "And after what happened, you took Lily and kept hiding." Rebecca nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "Caroline made me promise. In her letter, she begged me to keep Lily safe, to give her a normal life away from the manipulation and control she had experienced. I've spent 6 years trying to honor that promise." "What was in the letter?" Max asked, his voice gentle but insistent. "What exactly did Caroline say about me?" Rebecca stared at the pond, watching a mother duck lead her ducklings through the water. She was confused, scared. She wrote that part of her knew you were different, that you truly loved her. But she also wrote that her father had gotten into her head again, making her doubt everything. How? He showed up at her apartment when you were away on a business trip, told her he'd investigated you, that you were just another ambitious man, looking to use her family connections to advance your career. Rebecca's voice hardened. He told her that once you had a child with her, you'd have leverage over her forever, that you'd take the baby if she ever tried to leave. Max ran a hand through his hair, struggling to contain his anger. "That's insane. I never cared about her family connections. My business was already successful when we met." "I know that now," Rebecca said. After she was gone, I did my own research before deciding what to do with Lily. Everything I found suggested you were exactly who you claimed to be, successful on your own merits, ethical in your business practices. But by then, we were already hiding, and Senator Mitchell was looking for us. Has he found you?" Rebecca shook her head. "No, but there have been close calls. 2 years ago, I saw him at a campaign event in Faneuil Hall. I was working catering. I don't think he recognized me. We only met a few times when Caroline and I were roommates, but I quit that job the next day and moved us to a different neighborhood." Max absorbed this information, thinking of the years this woman had spent protecting his daughter, honoring her friend's wishes, even at great personal cost. "What happens now?" he asked finally. Rebecca turned to him, her expression resolute. "Nothing. Changes. Lily is happy, well-adjusted. She doesn't know anything about this situation, about her biological parents. She's my daughter," Max said, an edge creeping into his voice. "I have a right to know her." "And what would you do with that right?" Rebecca challenged. "Sweep in, with your wealth and privilege, and disrupt her entire life? Take her away from the only parent she's ever known? How would that honor Caroline's memory?" Max felt the accusation like a physical blow. "That's not what I want. I just want to be part of her life, to have a chance to know my daughter." "And what about Senator Mitchell? The moment you acknowledge Lily as your daughter, he'll know too. He's been looking for his granddaughter for years." The realization hit Max hard. Any legal claim he made to Lily would inevitably involve her grandfather, a man with power, connections, and a disturbing history of psychological manipulation. "There must be a way," Max insisted. "We could be careful, discreet. Start slowly." Rebecca stood, checking her watch nervously. "I need to get back to Lily. This conversation was a mistake." Max stood too, desperate not to lose this tenuous connection. Please, Rebecca, don't shut me out. At least think about it for Lily's sake. I've spent 6 years thinking about what's best for Lily, Rebecca said firmly. Nothing is more important to me than her safety and happiness. I understand that, Max said, and I respect it. But is living in hiding, always looking over your shoulder, really what's best for her? What happens when she starts asking questions about her father? Or when she needs medical records that don't exist because her birth was never officially registered? Uncertainty flickered across Rebecca's face. I've managed so far. But for how long? Lily deserves to know where she comes from, and she deserves the security and opportunities I can provide without having to live in fear. Rebecca hesitated, visibly torn. I need time to think. It's a lot to process. Take all the time you need, Max said, relief washing over him that she hadn't outright refused. Here's my personal number. Call me anytime, day or night. Rebecca took the card he offered, slipping it into her jacket pocket. I'm not promising anything. I need to consider what's best for Lily. That's all I ask, Max assured her. And Rebecca, thank you for everything you've done for my daughter. As Rebecca walked away, Max felt a complex mixture of emotions: grief for Caroline, anger at Senator Mitchell, gratitude toward Rebecca, and beneath it all a budding hope that he might finally have a chance to know his daughter. That hope was shattered 3 days later when James called with alarming news. Rebecca and Lily are gone, he said without preamble. They didn't show up at the diner or school yesterday. The apartment manager said they left in a hurry the night before, just packed a few bags and disappeared. Max felt the ground drop from beneath him. She ran. After everything we discussed, she still ran. There's more, James continued grimly. Senator Mitchell was spotted in their neighborhood the day before they disappeared. My source says he was showing Lily's photo to local businesses, claiming to be a concerned grandfather looking for his missing granddaughter. Cold dread settled in Max's stomach. He found them somehow, but how did he know about Lily now after all these years? I don't know, James admitted, but if I had to guess, something tipped him off recently. Maybe someone recognized Rebecca from her college days with Caroline. Maybe Lily's resemblance to her mother caught someone's attention. Or maybe, Max thought with a sickening realization, my sudden interest in them raised red flags. His investigation, his visits to the diner, his meeting with Rebecca, any of these could have drawn unwanted attention. We need to find them before he does, Max said urgently. Rebecca's frightened, not thinking clearly. She doesn't have the resources to stay hidden for long, especially with a child. I'm already on it, James assured him. But Max, we need to be careful. If Mitchell is involved, this could get complicated. He has political connections, law enforcement contacts. I don't care, Max said fiercely. This is my daughter we're talking about. Use whatever resources you need, spare no expense. For the next 2 days, Max barely slept, waiting for updates from James while trying to maintain the appearance of normality at work. On the third morning, his phone rang with an unknown number. Max, it's Rebecca. Relief flooded through him. Rebecca, where are you? Are you and Lily safe? For now, she said, her voice tight with stress. I saw him, Max. Senator Mitchell. He was showing Lily's picture at her school. We had to leave. Where are you? He repeated. A motel outside Portland. Maine, not Oregon, she added with a weak attempt at humor. We can't stay long. I don't have much money and I'm afraid to use my credit cards or phone. Let me help you, Max urged. Both of you. Come back to Boston. We can figure this out, together. I don't know, Rebecca said, uncertainty clear in her voice. If he's found us once, he can find us again. Not if we work together, Max insisted. I have resources, connections, we can protect Lily from him. There was a long pause. Lily keeps asking why we left so suddenly, why she can't go back to school and see her friends. I don't know what to tell her anymore. Tell her the truth, Max suggested gently, or at least a version of it that she can understand, that her biological father wants to meet her, that he's been looking for her for a long time. And what about her grandfather? How do I explain that the reason we've been hiding all these years is because her grandfather is a manipulative, controlling man who psychologically tormented her mother? Max had no easy answer for that. One step at a time. First, let me help. You get back safely. We can figure out the rest together. After a long pause, Rebecca agreed. Okay, but I need your word that you won't try to take Lily from me. Whatever legal rights you might have, she knows me as her mother. I'm the only parent she's ever had. I promise, Max said solemnly. I would never do anything to hurt Lily, and that includes separating her from you. We'll figure this out together. As Lily's parents, the word parents hung between them. A new and fragile connection formed out of extraordinary circumstances. Max arranged for a private car to bring them back to Boston, to his Beacon Hill home, where security was already in place. When they arrived that evening, Lily was asleep in the back seat, her small backpack clutched to her chest. Rebecca looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes testifying to sleepless nights and constant vigilance. Thank you, she said simply. As Max showed them to the guest rooms he had prepared, get some rest, he told her. We'll talk in the morning. But morning came with an unexpected interruption. Max was making coffee while Rebecca helped Lily with breakfast when the doorbell rang. His security system showed two people at the door, a woman in a business suit and a uniformed police officer. Mr. Thornton, the woman said when he opened the door, I'm Andrea Calloway from Child Protective Services. We've received a concerning report about a child possibly being held here under irregular circumstances. Max felt his blood run cold. What report? What are you talking about? We have information that you're harboring a child named Lily Hayes, who may be a victim of parental kidnapping, Andrea explained, her tone professional but firm. We need to see the child and verify her welfare. This is ridiculous, Max protested. Who filed this report? I'm not at liberty to say, Andrea replied. But we're required by law to investigate all credible reports of child endangerment. Behind Max, Rebecca appeared in the hallway, her face pale with fear. What's happening? Ms. Hayes? Andrea asked. We need to speak with you about your daughter and verify your legal guardianship. Rebecca's eyes darted to Max, panic evident. I am her legal guardian. I've raised her since birth. Do you have documentation to that effect? Birth certificate, adoption papers? The silence that followed was answer enough. I'm afraid we'll need to take temporary custody of the child while this situation is sorted. Out, Andrea said, her voice softening slightly but her stance firm. If you can provide proper documentation of guardianship, she'll be returned to you immediately. You can't take her, Rebecca said, her voice breaking. She's my daughter. Biologically, I am Lily's father, Max interjected, stepping forward. I can provide DNA evidence if necessary. This situation is complicated, but there's no child endangerment here. Andrea looked between them, assessing. I understand this may be a complex family situation, Mr. Thornton, but without proper legal documentation of parentage or guardianship, we're obligated to ensure the child's safety while the courts sort this out. At least let us explain the situation to Lily, Max pleaded, seeing the inevitability of what was about to happen. She's 6 years old and has no idea what's going on. This will terrify her. After a moment's consideration, Andrea nodded. You can have a few minutes with her, but I'll need to be present. As they walked toward the kitchen where Lily was finishing her cereal, Rebecca gripped Max's arm, her voice a desperate whisper. This is him. This is Mitchell. He's using the system against us. Max nodded grimly, realizing she was right. The timing was too perfect, the allegations too specific. Somehow Senator Mitchell had tracked them to his home and made the one move. They couldn't counter, involving Child Protective Services with allegations that were technically true. Without legal documentation of Lily's birth or Rebecca's guardianship, they had no immediate defense. We'll fight this, he promised Rebecca as they entered the kitchen. Together, the Boston Family Court building stood imposing against the gray October sky as Max and Rebecca climbed the steps for the emergency hearing scheduled just 24 hours after Lily had been placed in temporary foster care. The separation had been devastating for all of them, Lily's confusion and tears, Rebecca's barely contained panic, Max's growing fury at the system being manipulated against them. "Remember what Ellen said," Max murmured, referring to the high-powered family attorney he had engaged immediately. "Stay calm, stick to the facts, and focus on Lily's best interests." Rebecca nodded, her face pale but determined. She had barely slept, spending the night in Max's guest room, alternating between tears and fierce strategy sessions with Ellen Matthews, who had cleared her entire schedule to take on their emergency case. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than Max had expected, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that cast everyone in an unflattering pallor. Ellen was already at their table, reviewing documents with laser focus. Across the aisle sat Andrea Calloway from CPS and another woman Max didn't recognize. "That's Judith Parker, the court-appointed guardian ad litem for Lily," Ellen whispered as they sat down. "She'll be advocating for what she believes is in Lily's best interest, regardless of what either of you want." Before Max could respond, the courtroom doors opened again and a distinguished-looking man in his 60s entered, accompanied by a sharp-featured attorney carrying an expensive leather briefcase. Max felt Rebecca stiffen beside him. "Mitchell," she whispered, and Max's attention snapped to the older man. So this was Senator Richard Mitchell, Caroline's father, Lily's grandfather, the man who had driven his own daughter to flee in terror. In person, he radiated authority and charm, his silver hair perfectly styled, his tailored suit projecting wealth and influence without ostentation. If Max hadn't known the truth, he would have seen only a distinguished public servant, perhaps even admired him. Their eyes met briefly across the courtroom, and Mitchell's expression remained impassive, revealing nothing of his thoughts. He took a seat in the row behind the CPS representative, leaning forward to speak quietly with his attorney. "All rise," the bailiff announced, as Judge Sandra Watkins entered. In her late 50s, with steely gray hair and piercing eyes behind rimless glasses, she projected no-nonsense efficiency as she reviewed the file before her. "This is an emergency hearing regarding temporary custody of minor child Lily Hayes," she began. "I understand we have multiple parties with interest in this matter. Let's begin with Child Protective Services." Andrea Calloway rose. "Your Honor, CPS removed the child from Mr. Thornton's residence yesterday based on credible concerns about her legal status. The woman claiming to be her mother, Rebecca Hayes, has no legal documentation of birth or guardianship. The child has no official birth certificate on file in any state we've searched. Mr. Maxwell Thornton claims to be the biological father, but has no legal documentation to that effect either." Judge Watkins frowned. "So we have a 6-year-old child with no official existence in the eyes of the law. How did this happen, Miss Hayes?" Rebecca stood, trembling slightly. "Your Honor, I've raised Lily since birth. Her biological mother was my college roommate, Caroline Mitchell. She experienced complications during childbirth and didn't survive. Before she passed, she asked me to take care of her daughter and gave me a letter asking me to keep Lily safe from her father, Senator Richard Mitchell, not Max Thornton." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Senator Mitchell's expression darkened, but he remained silent. "You're alleging that you've been raising this child for 6 years based on a verbal request from her deceased mother, with no legal adoption process?" Judge Watkins asked incredulously. "Yes, Your Honor," Rebecca admitted. "Caroline was terrified that her father would take Lily and subject her to the same psychological abuse she suffered. I promised to protect Lily, even if that meant staying off the grid." Judge Watkins turned to Max. "And you, Mr. Thornton, you claim to be the child's biological father, yet you've made no attempt to locate your daughter until now." Max stood. "Your Honor, I had no knowledge of my daughter's existence until recently. Caroline Mitchell disappeared from my life 7 years ago while 3 months pregnant. I searched for her but found nothing. I believed she had terminated the pregnancy and started a new life elsewhere. It was only when I encountered Lily by chance that I began to suspect the truth." "Convenient timing," remarked Senator Mitchell's attorney as he stood. "Your Honor, I am representing Senator Richard Mitchell, the child's maternal grandfather and only legally verifiable relative. My client wishes to petition for temporary custody while these extraordinary claims are investigated. Max, felt a surge of anger at the calculated move. Mitchell had orchestrated everything: the CPS report, the hearing, and now his own bid for custody, all while presenting himself as the concerned grandfather stepping in to restore order. Ellen Matthews rose smoothly. "Your Honor, if I may, my clients are prepared to submit to immediate DNA testing to establish Mr. Thornton's paternity. We also have evidence regarding the circumstances of Caroline Mitchell's disappearance and the reasons for her fear of her father." Judge Watkins nodded. "I'll allow it, but I must say this situation is highly irregular. A child has been living for 6 years without proper documentation, without medical records, without any legal existence. Whatever the intentions, that is a serious matter." Mitchell's attorney stepped forward again. "Your Honor, while DNA testing proceeds, we ask that temporary custody be granted to Senator Mitchell. He is a respected public servant with an impeccable reputation and the financial means to provide stability for his granddaughter during this difficult time." "Absolutely not," Max interjected before Ellen could stop him. "Senator Mitchell is the reason Caroline fled in the first place. We have evidence of psychological abuse that made her fear for her unborn child's safety." "Those are slanderous accusations against a public figure with decades of service to this state," Mitchell's attorney countered sharply. "My client has been grieving his daughter for 7 years, only to discover that his granddaughter has been hidden from him by individuals with questionable motives." Judge Watkins raised her hand for silence. "I will not have emotional outbursts in my courtroom. This is precisely why Lily has been placed in temporary foster care, to remove her from a volatile situation while we determine the facts." Ellen regained control. "Your Honor, we respectfully request that while DNA testing is being conducted, Lily be returned to the care of Rebecca Hayes, the only parent she has known for 6 years. Removing her from familiar surroundings and routines is traumatic and unnecessary." "Ms. Hayes has already demonstrated a willingness to flee with the child," Mitchell's attorney argued. "She has no legal standing, no stable employment history, and has been living under questionable circumstances." "That's not fair," Rebecca protested. "I've provided a loving, stable home for Lily. I've worked the same job for 5 years. The only reason we left Boston was because Senator Mitchell was showing Lily's photo at her school, and I was afraid." Judge Watkins studied Rebecca thoughtfully. "Ms. Hayes, while I understand your attachment to this child, you must recognize the legal complications here. You've been raising a child without proper documentation, without establishing legal guardianship. That raises serious concerns, regardless of your intentions." "Your Honor," Ellen interjected, "we have located Martha Winters, the midwife who delivered Lily and witnessed Caroline Mitchell's last moments. She is willing to testify about Caroline's wishes regarding her daughter and her explicit fear of her father. We also have Caroline's former therapist ready to testify about the psychological abuse she documented during Caroline's treatment." Senator Mitchell finally spoke, his voice carrying the practiced resonance of a career politician. "Your Honor, if I may, these allegations are not only hurtful but puzzling to me. My daughter and I had our differences, as many parents and children do, but I loved her deeply. Her disappearance devastated me. Now to discover that my granddaughter has been kept from me based on unfounded fears, it's almost too painful to bear." His performance was masterful, Max had to admit. The perfect blend of dignity, grief, and restraint. No wonder he had maintained his pristine public image for decades while privately tormenting his daughter. "Senator Mitchell," Judge Watkins acknowledged, "while I respect your position, this court must consider all evidence regarding the child's welfare. Mr. Thornton and Ms. Hayes have raised serious concerns that cannot be dismissed without investigation." She turned back to the court at large. "Here's what we're going to do. DNA testing will proceed immediately to establish Mr. Thornton's paternity claim. Until those results are available, Lily will remain in temporary foster care with supervised visitation rights for Ms. Hayes, as she is the only parental figure. The child knows at this time." Rebecca made a small sound of distress, but quickly composed herself. "I'm also ordering psychological evaluations for all parties seeking custody," Judge Watkins continued, "and I want the midwife and therapist testimony expedited. We'll reconvene in 3 days to review the DNA results and preliminary evaluations." As the judge stood to leave, Max turned to Ellen. 3 days? Lily has to stay in foster care for 3 more days? It could have been worse, Ellen murmured. Judge Watkins is being cautious but fair. If she'd been swayed by Mitchell's reputation, she might have granted him temporary custody on the spot. Across the courtroom, Senator Mitchell approached, his attorney hovering at his shoulder. Up close, his resemblance to Caroline was striking. The same fine bone structure, the same green eyes that Lily had inherited. "Mr. Thornton," he said, extending his hand, "I believe we met briefly many years ago." Max ignored the offered hand. "Senator Mitchell, I wish I could say it's good to see you again." Mitchell's smile remained intact, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I understand your hostility given what you've been told, but I hope we can put aside these unfortunate misunderstandings for Lily's sake. After all, we're family." "We are not family," Max said coldly. "Caroline ran away because of you. She was terrified of what you might do to her child." Mitchell's expression hardened momentarily before smoothing into practiced concern. Caroline was a troubled young woman, especially after her mother passed. She struggled with anxiety, paranoia. Whatever she may have told others about me was a product of her psychological issues, not reality. Rebecca stepped forward, trembling with anger. "I knew Caroline for years. She wasn't paranoid or troubled until you undermined her self-worth and isolated her from everyone who cared about her." Mitchell regarded her with cool assessment. "Ms. Hayes, I remember you from Caroline's college days. I always thought you were a negative influence on her. How interesting to discover you've been raising my granddaughter all these years without bothering to inform her only living relative." "As per her mother's explicit wishes," Rebecca replied, her voice steady. Despite her shaking hands, Mitchell's smile turned cold. "Wishes expressed during what you claim were her dying moments, with no witnesses except a midwife operating outside proper medical protocols. How convenient that Caroline isn't here to verify any of this." Ellen stepped between them. "Senator, I suggest you direct all further communications through counsel. This conversation isn't productive for anyone." Mitchell nodded cordially. "Of course, I merely wanted to introduce myself personally. After all, we're all concerned with Lily's best interests, aren't we?" His gaze shifted to Max. "Though some of us have known about her existence longer than others." As he walked away, Max turned to Ellen. "He's playing this perfectly, portraying himself as the reasonable, concerned grandfather, while subtly undermining us at every turn." Ellen nodded grimly. "Men like Mitchell are dangerous, precisely because they're so good at manipulating perceptions. But we have something he doesn't have." "What's that?" Rebecca asked. "The truth," Ellen replied simply, "and documentation of Caroline's therapy sessions detailing years of psychological abuse. Mitchell doesn't know we have that yet. He thinks this is just your word against his." Outside the courtroom, Max pulled Rebecca aside. "Are you okay?" She shook her head, tears finally spilling over. "How can I be okay? Lily is with strangers, terrified and confused. Mitchell is spinning his web of lies, and the court is treating me like I've done something wrong by protecting her all these years." Without thinking, Max pulled her into a hug. She stiffened momentarily before relaxing against him, accepting the comfort he offered. "We're going to win this," he promised. "Mitchell may have power and connections, but we have the truth and each other." Rebecca looked up at him, surprise evident in her tear-stained face. "Each other?" "Yes," Max said firmly. "We're in this together now for Lily's sake." For the first time since this ordeal began, Rebecca smiled, a small, fragile thing, but genuine. "For Lily's sake," she agreed. The 3 days before their next court appearance passed in a blur of frantic activity. Max and Rebecca spent every available moment building their case with Ellen while taking turns for supervised visits with Lily at the Family Services Center. The sterile visitation room with its generic toys and watchful social worker made each hour with Lily bittersweet. Precious time together, overshadowed by the artificiality of the environment and Lily's increasingly confused questions about when she could go home. On the evening before their court date, Max returned to his Beacon Hill home to find Rebecca sitting on the terrace overlooking the Charles River, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill, her expression distant and troubled. "How was she today?" Max asked, sitting beside her. "Quieter than usual," Rebecca replied, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. She asked if she did something wrong, if that's why she can't come home. No matter how many times I tell her this isn't her fault, she doesn't understand. Max felt the now familiar ache of helplessness. "Ellen says the DNA results are conclusive. That should help tomorrow." "It proves you're her father, which I never doubted," Rebecca said, "but it doesn't address my lack of legal standing. In the eyes of the law, I'm just someone who's been raising a child without authorization." "You're her mother in every way that matters," Max insisted. "The person who's loved her and cared for her every day of her life." Rebecca turned to him, vulnerability evident in her expression. "Why are you being so generous about this? Most men in your position would be fighting to take full custody, arguing that I kidnapped their child." "Because that's not what happened," Max said simply. "Caroline made a choice based on her fear of her father. You honored your promise to your friend and gave my daughter a loving home when I couldn't. How could I not be grateful for that?" Rebecca studied him for a long moment. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone, more like Mitchell, I guess, controlling, entitled, used to getting his own way." Max smiled ruefully. "I can be those things in business, but this is different. This is about Lily." They sat in companionable silence, watching the lights of Cambridge shimmer across the water. Finally, Rebecca spoke again, her voice so quiet, Max had to lean closer to hear. "I never wanted children, you know. Before Lily, I had plans, finish law school, join a public interest firm, make a difference. But then Caroline disappeared, and when I found out what had happened, she trailed off, lost in painful memories." "What made you change your plans?" Max asked gently. "Why take on raising someone else's child?" Rebecca's expression softened. "The moment Martha placed her in my arms, she was so tiny, so perfect. She looked up at me with those green eyes, Caroline's eyes, and something just clicked. Everything I thought I wanted seemed insignificant compared to keeping her safe, giving her the love and stability Caroline never had." Max felt a sudden, overwhelming gratitude toward this woman who had sacrificed her own dreams to care for his child. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "for loving her when I couldn't." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "I was so angry at you, at first. I believed what Caroline believed, that you were just another controlling man who would use Lily to manipulate her. It was easier to keep believing that all these years. Easier than acknowledging that I might have kept a father from his daughter unnecessarily." "You did what you thought was right," Max assured her. "What Caroline asked of you." "But what if she was wrong about you? What if her fear of her father clouded her judgment about everyone else?" Rebecca looked away, guilt evident in her profile. 6 years, Max. You lost 6 years with your daughter because I didn't question Caroline's fears." Max reached out, gently turning her face back toward him. "We can't change the past. All we can do now is make sure Lily has both of us going forward." Rebecca studied his face, searching for something. Whatever she found seemed to reassure her because she nodded slowly. "Both of us," she agreed. As morning light filtered through the courtroom windows the next day, the atmosphere was tense but expectant. Judge Watkins reviewed the new materials before addressing the court. "I've received the DNA test results confirming that Maxwell Thornton is indeed Lily's biological father," she began. "I've also reviewed statements from Martha Winters regarding the circumstances of the child's birth and Caroline Mitchell's expressed wishes for her daughter's care." Senator Mitchell sat impassively, his politician's mask firmly in place. His attorney leaned forward, ready to object if necessary. "Most compelling, however," Judge Watkins continued, "are the sealed therapy records from Dr. Elaine Winters, who treated Caroline Mitchell for 3 years during and after college. These records document a pattern of psychological control and emotional manipulation by her father that is deeply troubling." Mitchell's composure slipped momentarily. His eyes narrowing in surprise. He clearly hadn't expected these records to surface. "Your Honor," his attorney interjected, "those records are confidential and should never have been released, even to the court." Dr. Winters obtained appropriate legal authorization to release them for this proceeding, given the extraordinary circumstances, Judge Watkins replied firmly. "And they provide crucial context for understanding Caroline's actions and fears." She turned to Senator Mitchell directly. "Senator, these records describe behavior that, while perhaps not rising to the level of criminal abuse, certainly explains why your daughter might have gone to extreme lengths to keep her child away from your influence." Mitchell's practiced smile remained in place, but his eyes had turned cold. "Your Honor, I'm deeply disturbed by these allegations. My daughter struggled with emotional issues after her mother's passing. I did my best to support her, but she often misinterpreted my concern and guidance as control." "The records indicate multiple instances where you told your daughter that no man would ever truly love her," Judge Watkins countered, reading from her notes. "That any romantic interest in her was merely strategic or sexual, that only you would ever put her best interests first." Mitchell's attorney jumped in. "Your Honor, these are private family matters being taken out of context. Many parents warn their children about potential exploitation, especially when the family has public prominence." Max felt Rebecca's hand slip into his beneath the table, squeezing tightly as they watched Mitchell attempt to charm and manipulate his way out of the evidence against him. "Further," Judge Watkins continued, ignoring the interruption, "there are documented instances of you undermining Caroline's relationships, investigating her boyfriends without her knowledge, and using that information to create doubt and insecurity. Dr. Winters characterized this as a pattern of coercive control designed to keep Caroline emotionally dependent on you." For the first time, Senator Mitchell looked genuinely uncomfortable. His attorney whispered urgently in his ear, but he waved the man away, choosing to address the judge directly. "Your Honor, I loved my daughter deeply. Perhaps I was overprotective. After her mother's passing, perhaps I worried too much about men taking advantage of her family connections, but to suggest I was abusive, that I would harm my own granddaughter, it's preposterous." "Is it?" Judge Watkins asked, her tone measured but firm. "Because what I see in these records is a pattern of behavior that explains exactly why Caroline Mitchell might have fled when she discovered she was pregnant. She was protecting her child from the same psychological manipulation she had experienced." She turned to face Max and Rebecca. "Which brings us to the current situation. Mr. Thornton has established paternity. Ms. Hayes has been Lily's primary caregiver since birth, acting on the biological mother's expressed wishes. Neither has legal standing as the child's parent under current law, though Mr. Thornton could petition to establish his parental rights." "Which I am doing, Your Honor," Max confirmed, "but not to the exclusion of Rebecca's role in Lily's life. We're proposing a joint guardianship arrangement that recognizes both our relationships with Lily." Judge Watkins raised an eyebrow. "That's an unusual request, Mr. Thornton. Most biological parents in your position would be seeking sole custody." "Lily's well-being comes first," Max replied simply. "Rebecca is the only mother she's ever known. Separating them would be traumatic and unnecessary." Rebecca spoke up, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. "Your Honor, I know my actions. In raising Lily without proper legal status were wrong regardless of my intentions. I'm prepared to do whatever is necessary to regularize her situation. Official birth registration, proper school and medical records, everything. But please don't punish Lily for my mistakes." "Judge," Watkins regarded them thoughtfully, "your proposal shows admirable focus on the child's best interests. However, there are legal complexities that can't be ignored. We need to establish Lily's legal identity with proper birth registration and documentation." "We're prepared to handle all of that," Ellen Matthews assured the court. "Mr. Thornton has already initiated the process for delayed birth registration with the appropriate authorities." "And what about Senator Mitchell's interest as the maternal grandfather?" Judge Watkins asked. Ellen's response was measured but firm. Given the documented concerns about Senator Mitchell's psychological manipulation of Caroline, we believe any contact should be supervised and structured, at least initially. Our priority must be Lily's emotional well-being, not Senator Mitchell's desire for access to a granddaughter he's never met. Mitchell's attorney bristled. "Your Honor, my client is a respected public servant with no history of any legal wrongdoing. To restrict his access to his only grandchild based on therapy notes from a clearly troubled young woman is punitive and unjustified." Judge Watkins held up her hand. "I'll make my own determination about what's justified, counsel." She turned back to the court at large. "I'm going to take the weekend to review all materials and consider the best arrangement for Lily's welfare. In the meantime, I'm ordering Lily's return to Ms. Hayes's care, with Mr. Thornton granted liberal visitation rights. We'll reconvene Monday morning for my final ruling." As the court adjourned, the relief of knowing Lily would be released from foster care was tempered by the uncertainty of what Judge Watkins would ultimately decide. Outside the courtroom, Senator Mitchell approached them, maintaining a careful distance that kept their conversation private from the scattered reporters lingering in the hallway. "Impressive maneuvering," he said, his tone conversational but with an undercurrent of steel. "Accessing Caroline's therapy records was unexpected. I underestimated you." "You underestimated how far we'd go to protect Lily from you," Max replied evenly. Mitchell's smile never reached his eyes. "This isn't over. Whatever Judge Watkins decides, I have resources and patience. Lily is my blood, my legacy. I won't be denied a relationship with her." "The way you weren't denied a relationship with Caroline?" Rebecca asked, her voice quiet, but cutting. "The one you manipulated and controlled until she felt she had to run away to protect her child?" Something dangerous flashed in Mitchell's eyes. "You don't know what you're talking about." Caroline was troubled, emotionally unstable. "I did everything I could to help her." "We have the therapy records," Max reminded him. "We know exactly what you did." Mitchell's political mask slipped momentarily, revealing a cold calculation beneath. "Records can be interpreted many ways. Public opinion can be shaped. Remember, Mr. Thornton, I've spent decades building relationships in this city. With judges, with media, with the child welfare system. This small victory today won't last." Before either of them could respond, Ellen stepped forward. "Senator Mitchell, I suggest you direct all further communication through your attorney. Any attempt to threaten or intimidate my clients will be documented and brought to the court's attention." Mitchell's mask slid seamlessly back into place. "No threats, Ms. Matthews, simply a realistic assessment of the situation." He nodded politely and walked away, every inch the dignified public servant. "He's dangerous," Rebecca whispered, watching him go. "Not physically, but in every other way. He'll never stop trying to control Lily, just like he controlled Caroline." Max placed a protective arm around her shoulders. "We won't let him. Not this time." That evening, after bringing Lily back to Rebecca's apartment and helping her settle in, Max found himself reluctant to leave. Lily had been clingy and emotional since her return from foster care, needing constant reassurance that she wouldn't have to leave again. "Stay for dinner?" Rebecca suggested, seeing his hesitation. "We're just having mac and cheese, but there's plenty." "I'd like that," Max agreed, touched by the simple inclusion in their routine. As they prepared the meal together, moving around Rebecca's small kitchen with surprising ease, Max found himself noticing things he hadn't before. The way Rebecca hummed unconsciously while stirring the pasta, the detailed artwork by Lily displayed proudly on the refrigerator, the warm, lived-in feeling of a home where every item had a history and purpose. Later, after helping Lily with her bath and listening to Rebecca read her a bedtime story, Max stood in the doorway of the child's bedroom, watching his daughter sleep. The fierce protectiveness he felt surprised him with its intensity. This little person, with her mother's green eyes and his stubborn chin, had completely captured his heart in a matter of weeks. "She looks so peaceful," Rebecca whispered, joining him in the doorway. "This is the first time she's fallen asleep easily since everything happened." "She feels safe again," Max observed. "With you." Rebecca smiled, a mixture of pride and lingering worry in her expression. "With us," she corrected gently. As they moved back to the living room, Max found himself studying Rebecca with new awareness. In the soft lamplight, away from the stress of courtrooms and legal battles, he noticed the gentle curve of her cheek, the determination in her jawline, the compassion that radiated from her every interaction with Lily. "What?" she asked, catching his gaze. "I was just thinking about how remarkable you are," Max admitted. "You've sacrificed so much for Lily. Your career, your own dreams, your security, all to honor a promise to Caroline." Rebecca looked down, uncomfortable with the praise. "It wasn't entirely selfless. I love Lily as if she were my own. I can't imagine my life without her." "That's what makes it remarkable," Max insisted. "You chose to love her, to put her needs above your own. That's the purest kind of love there is." Something shifted in Rebecca's expression. A vulnerability, a question. "And what about you? What kind of father do you want to be to Lily?" Max considered this carefully. The kind she deserves. Present, supportive. Someone who sees her for who she is, not who I want her to be. He paused, gathering courage for what he needed to say next. "I never had that myself. And my father was difficult, cold, critical. Everything had to be perfect or it wasn't worth doing. Is that why you work so hard? Why you've built such a successful business?" Max nodded, surprised by her insight. "Partly. I've spent my life trying to earn approval that never came. When I met Caroline, it was the first time I felt truly accepted for who I was, not what I could achieve. And then she disappeared," Rebecca said softly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "And then she disappeared," Max agreed. "I threw myself into work after that, building walls around the pain. It was easier than facing it." Rebecca reached out, briefly touching his hand. "I'm sorry you lost her, that you lost those years with Lily." "I'm finding my way back now," Max said, the simple contact of her fingers against his feeling strangely significant. "Thanks to you." Monday morning arrived with a surprising sense of calm. Whatever Judge Watkins decided, Max and Rebecca had reached their own understanding over the weekend. They would face it together as Lily's parents. The child herself seemed to sense the shift in their relationship, delighting in the simple pleasure of having both adults in her life working as a team. As they prepared to leave for court, Lily tugged on Max's sleeve. "Are you coming home with us after?" Max crouched down to her level. "I'm not sure yet, sweetheart. The judge is going to make some decisions about our family today." Lily's brow furrowed in concentration. "Rebecca says you're my real dad, like in my storybooks." "That's right," Max confirmed, his heart swelling at the simple acknowledgement. "But why didn't you find us before?" The innocent question carried no accusation, only childish curiosity. Max exchanged a glance with Rebecca, who nodded encouragingly. They had agreed to be honest with Lily in age-appropriate ways. "I didn't know where you were," Max explained gently. "Your mum, your birth mum, had to go away before you were born, and she asked Rebecca to take care of you. I've been looking for you for a very long time." Lily considered this, her head tilted in a gesture so reminiscent of Caroline that it made Max's chest ache. "And now you found us." "Now I found you," Max agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" Lily asked, extending her pinky finger solemnly. Max linked his finger with hers, sealing the most important promise of his life. Promise. The courtroom was more crowded than before. News of the custody battle involving Senator Mitchell had leaked, drawing media attention and curious onlookers. Mitchell himself sat with perfect posture, projecting confidence and gravitas for the benefit of the reporters sketching the scene. Judge Watkins entered, her expression giving nothing away as she called the court to order. After careful review of all evidence and consideration of the child's best interests, I'm prepared to issue my ruling in the matter of guardianship for minor child Lily Hayes. The eyes into a courtroom fell silent, the tension palpable. First, regarding paternity, DNA testing has conclusively established Maxwell Thornton as Lily's biological father. Mr. Thornton has filed for legal recognition of paternity, which this court grants, establishing his parental rights. Max exhaled slowly, relief washing over him at this first hurdle cleared. Second, regarding Ms. Hayes, while she has no biological connection to the child, she has served as Lily's primary caregiver since birth, providing a stable and loving home under extraordinary circumstances. The court recognizes that the legal irregularities in this arrangement were motivated by genuine concern for the child's welfare, based on the expressed wishes of the biological mother. Rebecca gripped Max's hand tightly, hope cautiously dawning in her expression. Therefore, in recognition of the existing psychological parent-child relationship and Mr. Thornton's support for continuing this relationship, I am granting joint legal guardianship to Maxwell Thornton and Rebecca Hayes, with physical custody, primarily residing with Ms. Hayes, and liberal visitation for Mr. Thornton, to be agreed upon between the parties. Rebecca let out a small sob of relief, quickly stifled. Max squeezed her hand, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Regarding Senator Richard Mitchell's petition for grandparental visitation rights, Judge Watkins continued, her expression hardening slightly, the court finds sufficient evidence of concerning behavior to warrant caution. The psychological assessment of Caroline Mitchell, documented by Dr. Winters, shows a pattern of manipulative and controlling behavior by Senator Mitchell that clearly motivated Caroline's decision to keep her child away from his influence. Senator Mitchell's mask slipped momentarily, anger flashing across his features before he composed himself again. While the court acknowledges the general value of grandparent-grandchild relationships, in this case, the documented psychological harm to Caroline Mitchell raises serious concerns about Senator Mitchell's ability to maintain appropriate boundaries with his granddaughter. Judge Watkins fixed Mitchell with a stern gaze. Therefore, any visitation between Senator Mitchell and Lily must be supervised and contingent upon Senator Mitchell completing a minimum of 6 months of counseling specifically addressing appropriate boundaries and relationship dynamics. The court will reassess visitation rights after receiving a positive recommendation from a court-approved therapist. Mitchell's attorney immediately stood to object. Your Honor, this ruling effectively denies my client access to his only grandchild based on unproven allegations about his relationship with his adult daughter. We respectfully request reconsideration. Your objection is noted, counsel, Judge Watkins replied firmly. But my ruling stands. The evidence presented from Caroline Mitchell's therapy records is both credible and concerning. Senator Mitchell's own testimony failed to adequately address these concerns. She turned her attention back to Max and Rebecca. I expect both of you to work together to regularize Lily's legal status immediately, obtaining a proper birth certificate, ensuring appropriate school and medical records, and establishing a stable co-parenting relationship that prioritizes her well-being. The court will require progress reports on these matters over the next 6 months. With a final tap of her gavel, Judge Watkins concluded the hearing. Court is adjourned. The courtroom erupted in murmurs and movement as reporters rushed out to file their stories. Ellen turned to Max and Rebecca with a wide smile. Congratulations, this is the best outcome we could have hoped for. Rebecca was openly crying now, relief and joy overwhelming her usual composure. We did it, we really did it. Max wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his own emotions making speech difficult. Thank you, Ellen, for everything. As they gathered their belongings, Max noticed Senator Mitchell approaching, his expression carefully neutral for the benefit of lingering reporters. Congratulations, Mr. Thornton, Mitchell said, extending his hand as if they were concluding a business meeting. I trust you'll ensure my granddaughter receives every advantage in life. Max ignored the offered hand. What I'll ensure is that Lily grows up knowing she's loved for exactly who she is, not as an extension of anyone's ego or ambition. Mitchell's smile tightened imperceptibly. A charming sentiment, but this ruling isn't the end. The court has merely delayed our relationship, not prevented it. I'm a patient man, Mr. Thornton, and persistent. So are we, Rebecca said, stepping forward. and we have something you don't." "What's that?" Mitchell asked with thinly veiled condescension. "Lily's best interests at heart," she replied simply. "Not our own." Something dangerous flickered in Mitchell's eyes, but before he could respond, Ellen intervened smoothly. "Senator, I believe your attorney is trying to get your attention, and we need to collect Lily from the court childcare center." Mitchell stepped back, his political mask firmly in place again. "We'll be seeing each other again, I'm sure. Family is forever, after all." As he walked away, Rebecca shuddered slightly. "He's not going to give up, is he?" "No," Max admitted. "But neither are we." They collected Lily from the court's childcare room, her face lighting up at the sight of them both. "Is it over? Can we go home now?" Rebecca knelt, gathering Lily into a tight hug. "Yes, sweetheart, we can go home." "All of us?" Lily asked, looking hopefully at Max. Max crouched beside them. "I have my own home, Lily, but I'll be seeing you every day, and sometimes you'll stay at my house too. Is that okay?" Lily considered this arrangement with serious concentration before nodding. "Like Emma's parents in my class. They live in different houses, but they both love her." "Exactly like that," Rebecca confirmed, smiling through her tears. "We both love you very much." As they left the courthouse, they were confronted by a wall of reporters and cameras, drawn by Senator Mitchell's involvement in the case. Max instinctively moved to shield Lily and Rebecca, but Ellen stepped forward. "My clients have no comment at this time. They ask that you respect their privacy as they focus on what matters most, the well-being of their daughter." They managed to navigate through the crowd to Max's waiting car, sliding into the back seat with Lily safely between them. As the car pulled away from the courthouse, Rebecca exhaled shakily. "I can't believe it's really over." "Not over," Max corrected gently, "just beginning." In the weeks that followed, they settled into a new rhythm as a family. Max rearranged his work schedule to be present for Lily, while Rebecca began taking paralegal courses online, reviving the legal career she had once dreamed of. They established a comfortable co-parenting arrangement, with Lily spending weekdays at Rebecca's apartment and weekends at Max's home, though increasingly they found themselves spending time all together, regardless of whose official time it was. Senator Mitchell, true to his word, did not give up easily. He launched a public relations campaign portraying himself as the loving grandfather unfairly separated from his only grandchild. He gave interviews discussing his grief over Caroline's passing and his desire to honor her memory by being part of Lily's life. He even began the court-mandated therapy, though Ellen's contacts suggested it was more performance than genuine engagement. "He's playing the long game," Ellen warned during one of their regular check-ins, "building public sympathy, going through the motions of therapy, waiting for an opportunity." "What kind of opportunity?" Rebecca asked, her old fears resurfacing. "Any perceived misstep on your part? Any crack in your co-parenting relationship? Any sign that Lily isn't thriving under your arrangement? He'll exploit any weakness." Max reached for Rebecca's hand automatically, a gesture that had become natural between them. "Then we won't give him any." As winter settled over Boston, bringing the first snowfall of the season, Max found himself standing in Rebecca's small kitchen on a Sunday evening, reluctant to leave after dropping Lily off from their weekend together. The child was already asleep, exhausted from a day of sledding and hot chocolate. "Stay for coffee," Rebecca offered, seeming equally reluctant for the day to end. "I'd like that," Max agreed, watching as she moved comfortably around the kitchen. Their relationship had evolved over the past months, deepening into something neither had anticipated. What had begun as a wary alliance for Lily's sake had gradually transformed into genuine friendship, and lately into something more that neither had yet acknowledged openly. "I've been thinking," Max said as Rebecca handed him a steaming mug, "about what Ellen said, about Mitchell waiting for any sign of instability in our arrangement." Rebecca nodded, leaning against the counter. "It worries me too. He has so many resources, so many connections. Sometimes I feel like we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop." Max took a deep breath, gathering courage. What if we created a more permanent arrangement, something Mitchell couldn't possibly challenge? "What do you mean?" "What if we got married?" Rebecca's mug halted halfway to her lips. Married. Max, that's a practical solution, he finished quickly, though his racing heart suggested his motivations weren't entirely practical. Think about it. As a legally unified family, we'd present a united front that even Mitchell would struggle to challenge. Lily would have the stability of a traditional family structure, which looks good to any court. Rebecca set her mug down carefully. Is that the only reason you're suggesting this? Legal strategy? Max met her gaze, knowing honesty was the only option. No, not the only reason. Then what? I care about you, Rebecca. More than I expected to. More than makes sense given how we met. These past months, watching you with Lily, working together, building this strange little family of ours, I've come to admire you, respect you, and yes, care for you deeply. Rebecca's expression softened. Max, I'm not saying it's love, not yet, he continued hurriedly. I'm not even saying it's the kind of foundation most people would build our marriage on. But it's real and it's growing, and I think it could become something wonderful given time. Rebecca moved closer, her eyes searching his. And if it doesn't? If we marry for Lily's sake and discover we can't make it work as a couple, then we'll handle it with the same grace and focus on Lily's well-being that we've shown so far, Max promised. But Rebecca, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we have something rare here, a chance to build a family based on mutual respect, shared purpose, and genuine caring. Most marriages start with less. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, considering his words. I care about you too, she finally admitted. More than I should, given everything. But marriage is a huge step. It is, Max agreed, and I don't expect an answer tonight. Just think about it for all of us. The answer came 3 days later, as they walked through Boston Common with Lily between them, each holding one of her hands and occasionally lifting her to swing through the air, her laughter echoing in the crisp winter air. Yes, Rebecca said simply, during a moment when Lily had run ahead to examine a particularly interesting icicle hanging from a park bench. Max turned to her, hope rising in his chest. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you, she clarified, a smile spreading across her face. For Lily, for security, for all the practical reasons, but also for us, for whatever this is becoming. Max's face broke into a wide grin as he pulled her into an embrace. You won't regret it. I'd better not, she teased, but her eyes were serious as she added, we'll take it slowly. Build our relationship while we build our family. Agreed, Max said, sealing the promise with a gentle kiss. There first. Ooh, kissing, Lily exclaimed, having returned to find her parents in an unexpected embrace. They both laughed, including her in their hug. You'll understand someday. Kiddo, Max assured her. They married 2 months later in a small ceremony at the courthouse with only Ellen, James, and a few close friends as witnesses. Lily served as flower girl, beaming with pride in her special dress as she watched the adults in her life formalize the family they had been building. Senator Mitchell's response came swiftly, a public statement congratulating the newlyweds, while expressing hope that the marriage would open doors to healing family wounds and rebuilding connections across generations. The veiled message was clear. He was still waiting, still watching, still planning his next move. But as spring arrived in Boston, bringing new beginnings and fresh possibilities, their focus remained firmly on the future they were creating together. Max had scaled back his business commitments, delegating more to his trusted executive team to focus on family. Rebecca had completed her paralegal certification and begun working part-time with a non-profit organization helping families navigate the child welfare system, turning her own difficult experiences into support for others. One bright May morning, they returned to Prospect Coffee, the place where everything had begun with a declined credit card and a child's simple act of kindness. As they sat at an outdoor table enjoying the sunshine, Lily suddenly jumped up from her seat. Look, Mummy, that lady looks sad. Can I help her? They followed her gaze to a young woman struggling with a baby stroller while trying to manage her wallet and coffee order. Without waiting for permission, Lily approached, offering to hold the woman's coffee while she settled her fussing baby. "My mommy taught me to help sad people," they heard Lily explain earnestly. "It makes the world prettier." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears as she reached for Max's hand. "She's going to be okay, isn't she? Despite everything, all the complications, all the people who've tried to control her life, she's turning out just fine." Max squeezed her hand, watching his daughter's simple act of kindness with overwhelming pride. Better than fine. She's becoming exactly who she's meant to be, compassionate, brave, and entirely her own person. As Lily returned to their table, her face glowing with the satisfaction of having helped someone, Max recognized the truth that had been forming in his heart over these past months. Family wasn't about blood or legal documents or public perceptions. It was about choice, choosing to love, to protect, to put someone else's needs before your own. It was about building something beautiful from whatever materials life provided, no matter how broken or unexpected they might initially seem. Rebecca had made that choice for Lily. Years ago, honoring her promise to Caroline with unwavering dedication. Max had made that choice when he discovered the truth, prioritizing Lily's well-being over his own legal rights. And now, together, they were choosing each day to be the parents Lily deserved, united in purpose, growing in love, and creating a legacy of kindness that would extend far beyond their own small family. Whatever challenges Senator Mitchell or life itself might still bring their way, Max knew with absolute certainty that they would face them together. Not as people thrown together by circumstance, but as a family forged by choice, strengthened by adversity, and bound by something far more powerful than DNA or legal rulings, the deliberate daily decision to love. And that, he realized as Lily climbed onto his lap and Rebecca's fingers remained intertwined with his, was the most beautiful choice of all. Forget to subscribe to our channel, and like this video if Max and Rebecca's path to becoming a family moved you. Every day, we bring unique stories that explore life's complexities and the power of human